Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today has been in the insurance industry for over 39 years. During this time, he's had a 100% success rate in getting insurance claims paid, with more than $150 million paid out to his clients. Today, he's going to show business people across the country how they are losing claims because of underinsurance, how to avoid non-disclosure issues, and how to protect yourself from business interruptions such as total loss from fire, loss of rent, and flooding. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our good friend, Lyndon Holland.
Hello, Daniel and Neely. Thank you. Thank you
Bye,
so
mate.
much. And what a pleasure it is to be on your podcast.
Well, it's always a pleasure. And, we're always about winning sales now. And there's plenty of things that can go wrong in business. And in my opinion, most business owners don't look far enough into the future and look for these business interruptions. So you're the expert in this field, and I'd like to pick your brains today and just have a look at reasons why people aren't prepared for business interruptions. So you've been in the field for 39 years. Boy, you must have seen some stuff over the past 39 years to business owners like us. What have you seen?
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. Thank you. What an interesting question. Look, Daniel, I've seen a lot of things happen over the years to small businesses. And as you know, within the first few years of establishing a small business, they normally fail. What happens is that we tend to forget what's important to us and concentrate on our core business and not look at mitigating the risks. So we tend to not mitigate it by having out correct insurance. And as you said, underinsurance is a very, very big risk in insurance in Australia. I find that probably 9 out of 10 businesses are underinsured or are incorrectly insured.
Wow.
And that's because they don't know how to identify their risk in the first place. In fact, most of them don't have a risk register. And if you don't have a risk register, how can you know what your risks are? So that's one of the first things we do is we identify the risks by likelihood and consequence.
So business owners like myself and Ninny must give you a lot of sleepless nights. So when you go to bed thinking about us, what runs through your mind about small business operators in Australia? What are these sleepless nights that you have?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, I do have sleepless nights sometimes. And when you are now dealing with people around the globe, it presents new risks and presents new challenges for us to be able to manage those risks. So for somebody who has a business such as your awesome business coaching business, we need to look at the risks for Nini and the family or your business partner or the children. So we need to look not only 1 week down the track, but we need to look 4 or 5 years and 10 years down the track. And it's important to review that on a yearly basis. And, you know, we do it twice a year because so many things change so often. So, you know, Nini might have another baby, and that changes the risks, and it changes what it is and the needs that the family need. So typically a family business, the principal and his wife are in their 30s and 40s. They've just taken out a mortgage. They've got 1 or 2 children or one on the way, normally 1 or 2 cars, and they've financed, and, you know, maybe even a business loan or an overdraft. So they're the sort of things we tend not to look at. And so if the main income earner is taken out of the equation and cannot earn an income, there's a big risk of sending everybody bankrupt or into liquidation because you can't afford or meet your debts when they fall due. So, and if you can't meet your debts when they fall due, you go into liquidation. We can transfer these risks by actually having correct business insurance. And I don't mean business insurance by ringing an insurance company direct and having what they call business insurance put together, because there's a big difference between business insurance that you deal direct with an insurance company, or business insurance that you actually go through and secure with a broker. For example, when you deal direct, the policy wording, the definitions and the benefits are sometimes 50% less when you deal direct than it is going through a broker. And so when you do your comparisons on the premiums and you think, okay, well, this one is with ABC insurance company, the broker's with ABC insurance company, and if I go direct, I'm saving myself $1,500 a year. So that's what I'm going to do. And it's not understanding what the benefits and the definitions are and what the policy wording differences are, Daniel. So it's a very difficult thing for small business people because they've got a cash flow issue. Can I afford the insurance? And then as they tend to expand and grow, they might not have had a claim and they go, oh, I don't need the insurance. And then next minute, there's a $5 million claim. And this is where we see so often businesses fail. If they don't fail getting their business off the ground, and if they're not using Daniel, they're not going to do that properly. But if they don't have the insurance to support them and back them in the event that there's a catastrophe, they're sure to fail.
But Lyndon, I'm perfectly healthy. I'm a former athlete. I eat the right foods. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm the best driver on the road. I've married into blue blood. It's pedigree. There's nothing wrong that could happen to me. I'm not going to bet against myself.
Well, that's it.
And I hear this. And a friend of mine just last week, 42, same story as me, dropped dead last week at 42.
Yeah.
$1 million business. What happened?
It's a really interesting question, Dan. The issue that we find is that everybody's invincible. And when you're 19 or 20 and you're starting out in a new business and you're an entrepreneur and everything's happening and you're driving a new Mercedes Benz or a new Ferrari or whatever it might be, it's a really, really interesting scenario where they say, oh, I'm just invincible and it will never happen to me. And it's like the coronavirus. It is spreading worldwide, and it is now starting to create concern in the countries that are joining China. So Taiwan and Korea and places like that. As far as Japan and Thailand are now starting to take precautions, and airlines are now banning flying in and out of certain cities within mainland China, and that becomes an issue. So the losses for Qantas, for example, they're going to lose probably 4 or 5 services a day to 2 cities. And when you're carrying 300, 400, 500 passengers, you're talking millions and millions of dollars of revenue lost. Now, I'm not talking to the likes of Qantas or BHP, but to give you an understanding of that quantum, if I was a small business and my only market was China and it was delivered by air and I couldn't get anything out of China for 3 months and I can't source a market anywhere else, then where am I going to go? If I had insurance and I transferred that risk to the insurance company, I know that I could survive. I could keep my staff. I could keep paying my mortgage, and I can keep paying my rent, and I could keep paying all those bits and pieces I needed to. But without it, you're going to have to start looking for somewhere else to go. And people will wait to see what happens, and sometimes it's just too late.
This coronavirus impacts businesses like mine. As a consultant, I plan trainings globally. So, we didn't plan for the coronavirus. It's a bloody inconvenience to me. And what happens is we don't plan for it. We don't look far enough ahead. Like you mentioned before, we think we're invincible and it's not going to happen to us. But we're in the middle of it. Nini is Taiwanese, and they've already shut 200 flights down between Dubai and China, and we were planning to go to Dubai at the end of the month. Now we can't go.
And I look forward to seeing you in Sydney when you can't fly to Dubai now.
And this is what I said to Nini as well, is I want to go back to Australia, but now the concern is, what if I go and then they close the border and I can't get back to Taiwan, then what? And then I've also got to think, yes, I am set up to operate an online business, but what if I had planned for events and I had events planned and I couldn't show up because we just bought a ticket to an event here in Taiwan? What if they don't come? So are you saying that I can transfer this risk because I can't win sales anymore? I only know how to lose sales now, but this insurance could protect me in situations like that. Is that the case?
Yeah, look, business interruption loss or consequential loss is, the losses that are the result of the consequences of the result of the risk that's happened. So the damage could be, for example, as you say, I'm prevented access to my building, for example, or I'm prevented access to my products or whatever. That prevents you from sales, that prevents you from turnover, that prevents you from daily incoming and outgoing. And so if you're prevented access, then you're entitled to seek the losses to be recompensated for. And that's what insurance is about, is if I suffer a loss, insurance is there to put me back into a position I was in before I suffered that loss. So whether that be loss of income, whether that be loss of revenue, whether that be loss of something else. However, one of the other things in losses is when you tell people that it doesn't cover my workmanship. So if I go to a seminar or a conference and I don't deliver and they're not satisfied, then my insurance doesn't cover that.
So I don't know anybody. I don't trust anybody. Where do you get the right advice? Because I'll tell you a story. You and I have the same microphone, and I've been using this microphone for 2 years and I love it. And it's probably cost me $250, $300, but I want to buy one for Ninny. So what I did the other day was I'm satisfied with it, but there's one thing I just want to know about it. So I spent an hour on YouTube looking for independent advice. And after I was convinced of the answer, I then rang the manufacturer because I didn't want to speak to the manufacturer first. I wanted to get my own advice. So people who are in our position, your husband and wife, you've got a couple of kids, your business is being successful, where do you start looking for advice? What do you do?
A great question. The best thing to do is to ask already your trusted experts around you. So you might have an accountant or a lawyer, an insurance broker, a trusted business partner, or somebody who's in business, and they would normally have somebody that they would trust to get this sort of advice. What we need to do is we have a lot of people running around getting expert advice from people who aren't experts. And it's like me trying to replace my own fence after the wind blew it down. I've done that before. I was young and I was foolish once before, and there was a storm in Sydney and it took away my brand new fence on my brand new home. And the next weekend, my father and I are there trying to repair it. The week later, the storm came back through and gone was the fence again. So we really do need to get expert advice, and to save that extra couple of dollars really, really costs us in the long run. And we've all bought something that's cheaper because it's cheaper and it looks the same, but it's not the same. So you really do need to, if you're talking about business advice, your business coach ought to know somebody who does financial planning, who has a touch on general insurance, and they will know experts in law. They will know experts in other areas in which they can put you in touch with. Unfortunately for us, my next door neighbour is an expert in insurance, and their father is an expert in insurance. None of them have ever done any business in the insurance industry, but they're all experts, and we all tend to take advice from people who don't know much about what they're talking about. And it's anytime we go sit around the dining table or with friends and we bring up a subject, there's always an expert there that doesn't really know anything they're talking about. So we need to be careful that we do engage proper experts. And if you're talking about in the general insurance industry, you really do need to have a steadfast and NEBA member as an expert to make sure that you're being delivered the right advice. And in the financial planning side of things, there's the Australian Independent Financial Planners Association, or independent advisors now, professional advisors, and that's where you go to seek those sorts of things. A lot of people have gone to the banks, and we've seen what's happened in the Royal Commission, and they thought they were seeing experts in financial planning and insurance, but we've since found out that they have no idea what they're talking about or what they're doing, and it's been a big cost to lots of small business. We've seen small business fail and lose because they've not sought the proper expert advice.
Just out of curiosity, would you ask your general practitioner, your local doctor, for marketing advice?
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, if I saw him on LinkedIn every day and I saw his business growing, and then all of a sudden there's 200 or 300 people in the waiting room, I'd want to know what he's doing, but I'm not sure that that's what's happening to my GP. So no, I wouldn't. No.
It's fascinating, isn't it? You'd ask that question and you'd think, no way, I'd never ask the doctor for marketing advice. But people are doing this all day, every day with their life when it comes to their insurances, getting poor advice. Why do people do that to themselves? Why is that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Yeah.
So in your opinion, or have you seen anybody, or because of the poor advice, and in result they actually they lost their business? Like, how bad can it be?
I think what she's asking is, can you do a special insurance policy so she can get rid of me?
Nanny, it's a wonderful question, and we have seen people make decisions with insurance advisors that have destroyed their businesses. And I can give you a couple of examples. I won't name too many names, but there's an example with Microsoft at the moment in the Supreme Court in Melbourne. Microsoft are taking one of their preferred partners to court because that preferred partner used 5 or 6 symbols in a row that were exactly the same as Microsoft written language for their computer systems. And so therefore it's their intellectual property. So far, the case has done about $18 million has been spent on defending, and there's no way knowing this person's going to win because Microsoft have it all together. The courts tend to agree that he's done the wrong thing by not asking for their permission to use their intellectual property. So for that man, he will lose everything. He's lost his house already. He's lost his wife. He's lost his business, and it's destructive. We've currently got a company here in South Australia that was a supplier and a manufacturer of swimming pools, and they had a fire that was catastrophic and burnt everything down. 2 years later, they still haven't been able to replace the molds because they were made overseas and they're still in the repair and build stage. So by the time they get here, which will take another 8 or 12 months to get here, be 4 or 5 years that he's lost his $25 million a year for that period of time. And his broker had him insured for consequential loss or business interruption for 6 months. So for 3.5 years or 3 years, he's still going to have no income. He's got insurance because it's only for 6 months. And this is where a lot of people make a lot of mistakes in business interruption insurance. They don't look at the long term. What happens in my risk register when we build that, we look at what would happen in the long term. What is the matrix? What does the matrix look like? And for small business people, and successful business people and entrepreneurs, we need to look at making sure every avenue is covered. And people say to me, Lyndon, why have they got everything insured? You've got their house and their car, their business partner, their wife, their children even, all have a portion of insurance. And that's because you don't know the unknown. And I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I can walk out and the unknown can hit me in the face, and I still wouldn't know what's hit me in the face. until I wake up the next day in intensive care or in Colombia or wherever it is that I end up in that unknown abyss. Yeah.
I've got a client in the UK, self-made millionaire, very successful guy. And he says, Daniel, it's what you don't know that hurts you.
Yeah.
It's the unknown. And it was the other week. We had a great Christmas holiday. I took time off to recharge, to rest the body, to rest the mind, and we were ready to start business. And the first day back in business, I was sitting here. It was about 2:30. My back was sore. Now, that's not unusual if you have a sedentary lifestyle. And I said, let's go to dinner early. We walked down the street and my back was hurting. I thought, I'll walk faster. That'll fix it. So we went down and we had hot pot and we sat down and I wasn't feeling good. My back was hurting. I thought I'll just have some more rice and then I'll put a bit more sauce on it. And I just kept eating. So I thought that'll take away the pain. Then I started to drink the tea. And then I said to Nini, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Went to the bathroom, come back and I said, let's go to the bread shop and we'll go home. Then I said, don't go to the bread shop. Let's just go straight home. And so on the way home, I said, let's not go home. Let's go to the doctor. And then halfway home, I said, let's not go to the doctor. Take me to the hospital and rush me straight to the hospital. There I am, perfect health. First day back at work, refreshed. I've written my goals. I wrote my goals in the morning because that's important. And I had a bloody kidney stone. And there I am, first day back at work for the year. And I'm in hospital already. Did not expect that. Did not see it coming at all. And that could have set us back.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, Daniel? I mean, you think about the things we do on our social level, and I'm not adverse. I am now because I'm getting a bit old, but I wasn't adverse to having a little game of tennis or a little game of football, and especially when you get out there with your cousin or your brother or your children, and it's the big I'm the macho man, I can do this, I can beat you competition type of thing, and you can easily get hurt. And as you get older, you don't realize how brittle your bones become or how susceptible you are to injury. And injury as we get older takes a lot more time to recover. And it's those sorts of things we don't know. Listen, we've all heard the stories of the 19-year-old that's a paraplegic or quadplegic, got into their 40s and 50s, and they've been, they can't return to work. And, you know, money is probably the second biggest reason for divorce in the world, because there's a lack of money and you can't pay for the food and you can't pay for the electricity. So it surprises me that 89% of self-employed people do not have income replacement insurance, because if I pick up the coronavirus tomorrow, I could be quarantined for 3 months. I can't go out and earn an income. Or if I pick up glandular fever, which can put me in bed for a year or two, you know, it can hit really, really hard. And it just won't happen to me. And we've all heard the stories of the physical, the PE teacher at school who was jogging around the block on a Sunday morning and died and was lying in the gutter. Some of the stories we can tell have been horrific. And if you truly love your family and you truly care about everything, you'll make sure that at least they're covered and you're not going to leave them destitute if you leave them.
Do you love me, wife?
I do.
Well, show me the insurance policy. Because I signed it. We had an interesting situation a couple of years ago, and I wasn't a business owner at this stage. I was a serious professional, and I was working with Emirates Airline, and so was Nini. And Nini had flown to the UK, and she was flying back into Dubai. This is 2010, doing her job, falls over on the aircraft, fractures her knee in 5 places. And for 2.5 years, her basic company insurance policy covered her basic. So it was like half salary, but we're talking like half salary might have been about $2,000. And then there was all the medical bills on top. And we're very lucky that the company paid for it. And there was probably about $250,000 worth of bills. But they got to a stage and they said, we can't do this any longer. And for 2.5 years, we were looked after. But I had spent all my personal savings during that time just keeping up with Nini. And then she lost her job at 6 months pregnant. So 6 months pregnant, there's what you've been doing for 10 years of your life, you can't do anymore. So for Ninny at that stage, she had to totally reinvent herself. So she lost a job. She had to leave Dubai, and, God bless Emirates, they took care of her really well, but she still had to go. And then what happened to me was I had to make a choice. Do I stay and live there and work, or do I go back home for the birth of my daughter? And I actually had to resign from my job and walk away. So at that stage where, 32, one child on the way, we've spent all of our savings, and I've got to give up my job and I have to retool. And I would say the negative impact on our life probably impacted us fully from, I would say, 2010 till at least 2000, what are we now? 2020. So 2010 to probably just in the last couple of years where we've brought our skill set back up to speed with the market. So can a serious professional cover themselves as well? In this incident, can they cover themselves?
Yeah, absolutely, Daniel. And it's a really, really important thing to assess. I mean, I've had the privilege over the last 38, 39 years to work with people like Jerry Harvey, Jack Corbett, who was involved in the Young Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, and people like that. And they say to me, within 5 or 10 years, I'm going to have a certain amount of assets, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and whatever. And you say to them, okay, well, what happens if? And they tend to look at you especially when they're young and they're in their early 20s and 30s, and they say, well, it's never going to happen to me. And you hear it time and time and time again. And these people have incomes, enormous incomes. Some of them have $4 or $5 million a year income as a single generating person. And they live that lifestyle according to that. And to take that all away from them is like putting them in, in the Bangkok Hilton. They feel like they're in jail. They feel like they're imprisoned. They can't do what it is that they want to do. So we specialize in the self-employed entrepreneurs and specialists in making sure that we don't come across that scenario, that in the event that they can't work for 6 months, 12 months, or their lives, that their income is replaced for the rest of their lives. They can continue to enjoy the custom that they're used to, and continue to stay married and stay as a family. When you don't have any money and you can't do things, everything changes. And it takes a strong partner, a strong wife or a strong husband to support their partner for 10, 20 or 30 years when their other partner's disabled and there's no money coming in, and I've got to stay home and bring up the children and everything else. So the pressure we put on our partner when we leave them aside, if we've had an accident or a trauma or a disability, or worse still, a death, is terrible. And people don't understand what the risk is. And when you sit in front of somebody and you say, well, don't you really love your wife? Because your insurance should be $5 million, not $100,000. They look at you and go, well, why? Well, I've got children under the age of 5. I want them to go to private school. I want them to go to university. I want them to do this. I want the mortgage to be paid off. And I really don't want my wife to have to go to work. And I want her to be able to do what she needs to do. And to do that, you need to say, well, you need to produce an income of this amount of money, which replaces the income that you would be producing. And today you'd be lucky to get 5 or 6% interest return. So you need 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times the sum insured you used to have 10 years ago. So to produce $1 million a year in income today, you've almost got to have $10 million invested earning 10%. I don't have $10 million in the bank. Do you? No. And so, it's few and far between. And when it comes to business partners, and if you've got business partners and something happens to a business partner, you can only support them for a certain amount of time. Yes, I'll be here. I'll support you. You're sick. But let me tell you, after 2 or 3 years of you continue to pay them and they're sick and they're not coming into work and they're not producing, you get to the stage where you've had enough and saying, I'm sorry, this is not working. And it ends up in terrible litigation, and that's destructive. And this is the sort of thing that a proper planning of risk management can actually rid you from, can actually take away that stress. So overnight time you can sleep and know that everybody around you is safe, including your business. I come across companies, Daniel. I came across a freight company June last year, that they were turning over several $100 million a year. They didn't have any insurance at all, not even liability insurance, which is amazes me that they didn't even, no contents insurance, nothing, not a thing, nothing, no cyber insurance, no protection insurance. They were taking payments on, wherever they were going and whatever they were doing, they were breaking the law, because in our country, the directors or the board are responsible to make sure the safety of the clients and the company itself. So if I don't have insurance and it all goes down the tube, I could be criminally charged in Australia.
Incredible. So it's not about the size of the ring on your finger anymore, how much you love your partner. It's about the size of the insurance policy.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
One question. You've been in the industry for 39 years. You've got 100% success rate in insurance claims paid out, and you've put $150 million back into your clients' pockets. I've got to ask the question, why are you more successful than other people in the insurance industry?
Yeah. And Daniel, it's an interesting question. I mean, I'm passionate about what I do and what I believe in. And I believe, as I said earlier, that insurance is there to put you in a position to replace the loss, so that you be in the same position you were in before you experienced that loss. And whilst a lot of policies have definitions and they have exclusions and clauses and other bits and pieces, I'm one for integrity and honesty, and that goes both ways. When I fill in my my proposal to the insurance company, I need to be brutally honest. And if I expose everything to them and give them everything on a silver platter, they know exactly everything they're exposed to. So if I have a loss, they can't say we weren't aware of it and decline the claim. Listen, Daniel, we've had claims that have taken some time. There's a specific claim in the back of my mind right now where the insured was paid $12 million. The insurance company said they would never, ever get paid. They weren't going to pay it. He would have to die before it was paid. This was a life insurance policy, and the life insurance policy has terminal illness attached to it. And he was suffering from 5 different illnesses. And because the company wanted to understand one specific illness, which one would kill him, and they wanted it to be defined and definitive, until we proved that or we came up with some evidence of that, they weren't going to pay it. And as the specialists, the 3 specialists and the 2 GPs said, one of the 5 conditions is going to kill him. Which one we don't know, but we do know this, one of them will. And so eventually we got that paid. But I tell you, sometimes it's really, really difficult. And that took, nearly 3 years. And the mental stress and the financial stress that puts the insured under is unbelievable. And we saw that come out again in the Royal Commission, where the likes of ComInsure were changing medical reports, or they were changing their chief medical officer's reports according to the reports. There's no integrity in that. There's no honesty in that. If I've been paying my premiums for 25 years or 30 years, and I suffer a loss as a consequence of that loss, I might die next week or whatever it is. I then need to honour my contract, and my contract is if you suffer a loss, I'm going to put you in a position you were in before you suffered that loss, or help you manage through it. So life insurance is a little bit different to general insurance, where the life insurance pays you a lump sum to get your affairs into place before you pass away. And for some people, that financial burden being lifted actually puts them in a position where they're mentally stronger and they actually come back out of it. I've seen people recover from tumors and cancer and heart conditions because their financial trauma has been taken away from them. And so they're able to concentrate on getting better. And I've got a guy right now who's lived 12 months past what the specialist cardiologist said he was going to live by, simply because we got his insurance paid and he's spending time with his family and there's no more stress there anymore.
Incredible. So I'm a business owner. I've got a wife, I've got children, and I've got this insurance policy, and I'm a little bit concerned. Can you review this for me? Can you review it?
Yeah, and we will review it, and that's one of the things to do. So you can send that to me after today's YouTube webinar and podcast, and we'll sit down and discuss the differences in them. One of the things you need to be aware of is what the definitions are, and there is so many definitions in so many different products that are available out there. I remember when I had a discussion with a senior person at AMP, and they said, well, we've decided we want to take away some of the bells and whistles from the insurance product to make it more affordable. And I said, well, when you start taking away those sorts of things, you're taking away the unknown. I mean, the idea is that I give you some money and we're gambling that I'm going to continue to pay that money and not claim, or you're gambling to say, well, I know your longevity is 85. And I know that you'll probably die before you're 70 or 80. And I know, so that's going to be claimed. However, you can take it out to your 65 and you might die when you're 66. And so therefore there's no claim on that product. So it is a gamble. As you said, it's a big gamble to play with your family. It's a big gamble to play with your assets and a big gamble to play with your business partner.
Huge. So I'm going to reach out to you, and for the people joining us on the podcast, we will also put Lyndon's details in the feed below. But would it be okay if our friends reached out to you for you to have a look at their policies and just to check in, are they covered for now? Are they covered for the future? And will their policy protect their family? Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, that's a great idea, Daniel. And I mean, I'm happy to give it some time and some consideration. And most of them, and we sometimes find people who are insured correctly. I mean, it does surprise me, but most of them will find some little surprises that they're not aware of. Yesterday, there was a gentleman in Perth. He's a manufacturer of tanks, and these tanks go into mines and those sorts of things. They collect human waste. They turn them into water that goes back into the environment. Now, he had liability insurance, and when I read the policy, he was actually excluded from product failure. So we've got these tanks that are collecting human waste, and if one leaks, it could contaminate rivers or whatever. He's excluded from a claim. That's just ridiculous. And I can tell you hundreds of stories like that, hundreds, and people are just surprised. You only know how good your insurance policy is when you come to claim.
Well, I think I can measure how good your policies are because there's 100% success rate, and you've put $150 million back in your clients' pockets. And I think that's incredible. Well, thanks for joining us.
It's a great achievement. Just before you go, I mean, the team here with Kate and Sarah and the other staff, they're just awesome at what they do. And they really, really do care, and they genuinely have an understanding of what your risks are. And it's really important to understand that. So, but yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Lyndon Holland, all Lyndon's details are below. And I really encourage you to reach out to him personally and review the policy. Either way, it will give you peace of mind and you'll sleep straight at night. So, Lyndon, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Daniel. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. What a great, great, great pleasure it was. Thank you.
My pleasure.